Before I begin, I would just like to draw your attention to a new horror game called True Horror. A choose-your-own adventure game for iOS and Android. The game features 10 choose-your-own endings, which include narrations from the popular horror narrator, Let's Read. You choose if you live or die. If you are interested, I have included links to the game in the description. Now, without further ado, let's begin. What makes a place haunted by a poltergeist? Is it the people that inhabit them, carrying a lingering darkness wherever they go? Or is it the very walls which have been imbued with a profound tragedy which manifests and torments all who reside there? These 5 houses may hold a clue to understanding the mysteries of the poltergeist. Not to be confused with its American counterpart, Amityville, a house in Amityville, France, was said to have been ransacked by a poltergeist in the August of 2014. A housewife, 57-year-old Chantal Hachette, reported witnessing objects being thrown around her home, including an iron being tossed through a window. In the midst of the chaos, the frightened lady called the police. When the police arrived, they saw a television crash to the floor before their eyes. A neighbour who rushed to help also witnessed the violent disturbances firsthand when a bouquet of plastic flowers was thrown into his face, seemingly by unseen hands. After a flurry of requests from ghost hunters and investigators desperate to visit the by now nationally famous house, the French police released a statement which denied the entire case. It was stated that the seemingly paranormal events at Amityville had been falsified. They even released a confession, signed by Chantal Hachette, which declared that she, in a fit of female hysteria, had wrecked her own home. The housewife was subsequently summoned to court under charges of providing false information and wasting police time. Not before too long, however, it was found that Chantal was illiterate and could never have written or read her alleged statement. As such, the lawsuit against the woman was overturned, plunging the case into obscurity. The truth of the matter may now never be known. Was the house at Amityville plagued by a violent poltergeist? This unassuming Italian house, chillingly dubbed the House of Souls, is steeped in legend. It is said that in the Middle Ages it served as a popular inn for passing travelling merchants, soldiers and pilgrims. Sadly for them, these people never completed their journey, for it is claimed that anyone unlucky enough to stop at the inn would be horribly killed and robbed by the innkeepers. Their chosen method of murder was the use of a series of hidden passageways throughout the building. When local authorities were eventually alerted to the innkeepers' nefarious activities, it is said they uncovered the mutilated corpses of all their victims buried around the house. The murderous innkeepers were captured and executed. For hundreds of years afterwards, the house has remained abandoned, its sinister reputation keeping future owners away. After World War II, a family reluctantly moved in. They had lost all their possessions, and their house had been bombed by Allied fighters. Throughout their short-lived stay, they reported hearing the cries of the tortured echo through the walls of the house. Doors slammed of their own accord, and inexplicable noises sounded from every corner. One night, the family claimed to have seen an apparition of a spectral woman searching for her long-lost lover whose life had been taken at that house so many years before. When the spectre disappeared mid-movement, the terrified family fled. Since that time, the House of Souls has returned to its former state of abandonment, with more stories of terror adding to its already legendary status. This ordinary-looking house is number 30 East Drive in Pontefract, England. Despite its normal appearance, it has become globally famous as one of the most haunted houses in Europe. Its sinister reputation dates back to 1966, when the Pritchard family moved in with their 15-year-old son and 12-year-old daughter. Soon afterwards, the family experienced small incidents that convinced them their new home was haunted. Believing it to be a friendly ghost, they fell into the habit of calling the entity Fred. However, time would reveal that Fred was far from the jovial spirit they had thought him to be. After investigators and mediums started visiting the house, the serious poltergeist activity started. Sudden, cold gusts of wind rushed through the house in the middle of summer. Puddles of water manifested without explanation. One night, a heavy chest of drawers began to sway of its own volition, forcing the terrified Pritchard family to run away and sleep at a neighbour's house. When they returned, the house was still. So still, in fact, that nothing remarkable happened at 30 East Drive for the next 2 years. The silence broke when the daughter, Diane, was dragged up the stairs by her neck in front of her family. Her neck was left covered in marks. Whatever force had been responsible for this ghastly attack was completely invisible to all who witnessed it. Far from the end of their ordeal, the Pritchards said they next experienced vivid dreams and nighttime sightings. On separate occasions, all of them reported witnessing a dark, hooded monk-like figure appearing before them, either in dreams or as a full-bodied apparition. It is for this reason that the house is now known as the Black Monk House. Paranormal investigator Tom Cunniff, who claims to have studied the house, has stated that across the hill from 30 East Drive were once the gallows of a local monastery, active from 1090 to 1539. Sometime before the monastery was dissolved in the 16th century, a monk was hanged there for the murder and rape of a young woman. It is speculated that it is this monk who haunts the house at 30 East Drive, his alleged attack on young Diane being a continuation of his dark past. To this day, the house continues to produce anomalous phenomena for visiting paranormal investigators. And for those interested, it is open to any and all who dare find out the truth. In 1985, Lucie and Jean-Marc Baumer moved into a small house in Saint-Quentin, France. During their first month in their new home, the couple heard many loud and seemingly inexplicable noises coming from around the house. At first, the Baumer rationalized the sounds as coming from the neighbors. However, as time went by, they began to realize there was more to their new home than first met the eye. One day, Lucie found a peculiar red stain on the wall. Not thinking much of it, she simply cleaned it off. The next day, the stain was back. Not only that, it had multiplied exponentially, with red liquid gushing from the walls of the house. And it was not merely the walls. Bedding and clothes, even those put away in drawers, were covered in the sanguinary substance. Alarmed, Lucie called the police. The 2 officers in charge of the investigation examined the liquid and suggested it was blood. They hypothesized that an injured dog may have entered the house and sneezed blood everywhere. The officers proceeded to seal the house and put flour on the floor to see if any such dog returned and left prints behind. They returned the next day to find yet more of the same red substance, but no prints. When biologist Jacques Chance was interviewed for the French television show Mysteries, he declared that after analysis, the substance was indeed blood. But not blood of a sick dog. No, it was human blood. Terrified, the Belmers decided to leave. After the couple moved out, there have been no further reports of paranormal phenomena by subsequent tenants. 。    . 。  . . . . . . . . . . . 。 . . . . 。 . . . 。 . . 。 . . 。 . . 。 . . . 。 . . 。 . 。 . . 。 . . . . 。 . . . . 。 . In 1792, the Northwest Indian War was being waged by the United States against a confederacy of Native Americans. A short distance from the heart of Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, Native American raiders are said to have attacked and murdered a mother and her children. This barbarous occurrence was an act of war, meant to dissuade potential settlers from returning. And, if the following account is to be believed, dissuade is too light a word. For some believe that as the blood of the mother and her 3 children soaked into the earth, something evil was born. In 1988, Bob and Lisa Cranmer and their children moved into 3406 Brownsville Road, the house supposedly built upon the site of the grisly murders centuries before. Even before the Cranmers bought the house, during a walkthrough, one of their children began hyperventilating by the staircase after having seen an apparition. This was a moment of foreshadowing, hinting at the horrors that lay in wait for the unsuspecting family. According to a book written by the father, Bob Cranmer, many years later, the first few years of living at the house were marked by small nuisances. Flickering lights, for example, were regularly experienced. Before long, it became commonly accepted by the family that the house was inhabited by a spirit. Little thought was initially given to this. It was merely a quirky side note to Bob Cranmer's political life as a reputable county commissioner. However, as time went by, it became more difficult to sideline what was happening in the house. Dark fogs descended. Mysterious footsteps raced across floorboards. Invisible hands rapped against walls. And arguably most chilling, crucifixes were bent. Everyone in the family started to experience psychological issues. Their minds and thoughts were oppressed by something dark. One day, Bob's son, Bobby Jr., attacked his father, unprovoked and entirely out of character. The incident was reported to the police, but the charges were dropped. Desperate for an end to their torment, the family called in several priests who repeatedly exorcised the property. It took a few years before the building was finally cleansed, and the house freed of the alleged demonic entity which had shaken the family's life for years. The following is Cranmer's own words, and describes how blood appeared in the house during the exorcisms. Some of the areas where the blood was dripping was so far up, over 9 feet, that a person would have had to have used a ladder to get there. Another interesting aspect was that it was only on the walls and not the ceilings, so that if it were thrown up there, it would have been impossible to miss hitting the ceilings. It looked as though the walls were bleeding. Thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed. If you did, please subscribe for more of the paranormal. And if you have not done so already, don't forget to click the bell icon to receive notifications of my latest videos as soon as they are published. Remember, the more you know, the more there is to fear.